Picture this. It's freezing outside, but you're sitting inside your cozy room, sipping hot coffee with the heater turned all the way up. To you, winter is just a mild inconvenience that you can solve with a remote control. Life is pretty good, until you realize how lucky you actually are. But if we rewind the clock back 20,000 years, stepping outside meant entering a planetary freezer. No heaters, no coffee, no bricks. Just an endless horizon of ice and snow at -40 degrees. A cold so brutal that it could turn an unprotected human into a solid ice cube in less than 10 minutes. Welcome to the last glacial maximum, famously known as the Ice Age. This wasn't just a long winter, it was a global crisis. The massive sheets of ice were miles thick, swallowing entire continents like Europe and North America. Sea levels dropped so low that places like Russia and Alaska were connected by a giant strip of dry, frozen land. Now, nature's heavyweights were perfectly built for this hell. Massive woolly mammoths had thick layers of fat and heavy fur coats. Saber-toothed cats had razor-sharp fangs and muscle power. Cave bears were giant tanks. They looked at the frost and said, "This is our kingdom now." And then there was us, Homo sapiens, a bunch of hairless, weak, fragile mammals with no sharp claws, no camouflage, and absolutely zero built-in fur. Physically speaking, we were the worst possible design for a frozen planet. By all laws of nature, we should have gone extinct. But we didn't, because we had a secret weapon, a massive brain, and a ridiculous amount of stubbornness. So what was our first move? We couldn't grow fur, so we had to steal it from the animals who did. But early humans quickly realized that just wrapping a raw animal hide around your shoulders doesn't work. The freezing wind would just blow right through the gaps and freeze your bits off. To survive, humanity needed a serious tech upgrade. Enter the bone needle. Some genius caveman took a sharp piece of animal bone, drilled a tiny hole through it, and changed history forever. Using animal tendons and sinew as thread, they could now stitch multiple furs together. This wasn't just basic protection. This was the birth of tailored clothing. They made tight coats, snuggly pants, and heavy winter boots that kept the body heat completely sealed inside. Scientists believe this bone needle is actually more important for human survival than the invention of the wheel. Because without tight clothes, humans could never leave their caves to hunt or explore. But keeping your body warm was only half the battle. You also needed a warm place to sleep. Normally, humans looked for caves. But when you are traveling across a flat, frozen tundra, there are no caves. And guess what? There were no trees either to build wooden huts. So, what do you do when you need a house, but you have no wood and no stone? Simple. You build your house out of the skeletons of your enemies or dinners. Humans started building massive huts out of woolly mammoth bones. They used the heavy skull and jawbones as the foundation so the wind couldn't blow it away. Then, they arched the massive ivory tusks to form the roof frame. Finally, they covered the whole skeleton structure with heavy mammoth hides to seal out the freezing air. Inside these bone mansions, it was remarkably cozy. Some of these bone huts were so large that up to 50 people could live inside them together. But living in a crowded bone house with 50 unwashed Stone Age people meant things got smelly. And speaking of food, you couldn't just order pizza in the Ice Age. To fill 50 hungry bellies, you had to hunt the giants. Which brings us to the most dangerous part of Ice Age life, the hunt. And they didn't do it alone. Hunting a woolly mammoth wasn't just a challenge. It was a prehistoric boss fight. One stomp from this beast could turn a human into a pancake. So, how do you kill a multi-ton giant with just a wooden stick and a sharp stone? Simple. You don't fight harder, you fight smarter. Humans used the landscape as a weapon. A group of humans would scream, wave fire, and scare the mammoth, driving it towards a hidden trap. They would trick the heavy beast into running straight into a deep mud pit or a steep cliff covered in snow. Once the mammoth was stuck, the hunters would surround it. It was dangerous, but one successful hunt meant food for months. But storing meat in the Ice Age was actually easy. No refrigerators needed, they just buried it in the snow. The ground was a giant freezer. But leaving piles of fresh meat around your camp attracted unwanted guests. Wild, hungry wolves started circling human camps, smelling the leftovers. Normally, humans and wolves would fight to the death. But during the brutal Ice Age, both species realized something. Humans had extra food but needed protection. Wolves needed food and were great at tracking down prey. So, instead of killing each other, they made a deal. Humans started tossing leftover bones to the friendlier wolves. Over generations, these friendly wolves evolved, changed, and became the world's first dogs. Now, humans had the ultimate alarm system. If a saber-toothed cat sneaked up at night, the wolves would bark. This alliance between humans and dogs was a game-changer. It made humans the undisputed apex predators of the frost. But the Ice Age wasn't just about hunting and surviving. Humans also got bored. Really bored. With nothing to watch and no internet, they turned to the walls. They invented art. Deep inside dark caves, by the light of animal fat lamps, they painted their stories, their hunts, and their dreams. They even carved the world's first musical instruments out of bird bones and mammoth ivory. Imagine sitting in a bone hut, wrapped in tailored furs, listening to bone flutes, with a loyal wolf sleeping at your feet. It wasn't just survival anymore. Humans were creating culture in the middle of a planetary apocalypse. They had beaten the freeze. But the biggest challenge was still ahead. What happens when the ice finally melts? The world was about to change again, and our ancestors had to adapt or lose everything. Around 12,000 years ago, the ultimate plot twist happened. The planet started heating up. The great ice sheets began to melt. For thousands of years, humans had optimized their entire lives for the freezing cold. Now, their icy kingdom was turning into mud. As the grasslands turned into forests and deserts, the giants of the Ice Age couldn't cope. The woolly mammoths slowly went extinct. With their favorite giant dinners gone, humans faced a massive identity crisis. They couldn't live in bone huts anymore. But instead of giving up, our ancestors did what they do best. They adapted. Again, as the ice retreated, it left behind rich, fertile soil. And humans stumbled upon a brand new cheat code: agriculture. They stopped chasing mammoths and started planting seeds. They built permanent villages, which grew into towns, and eventually, civilizations. Think about it. The entire modern world, our cities, our technology, the internet, exists because a group of stubborn doodles survived the freeze. If they had frozen to death 20,000 years ago, you wouldn't be watching this video right now. In fact, nobody would be here. They passed down their stubbornness, their creativity, and their love for dogs directly into our DNA. So, the next time you complain about the winter weather or wait for your room heater to warm up, just take a moment to look at your hands. You are the descendant of the ultimate survival champions. You carry the fire that conquered the deadliest freeze in history. Not bad for a hairless mammal, right? If you want to unearth more deep chapters of human history, told through simple doodles, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join us on the epic arc as we map out the crazy journeys that made us who we are today. See you in the next era.